Hey guys, Pedro here to tell you about the latest from Parasite Inc. Cyan Night Dreams, out August 19th on Reaper Entertainment. This album has 10 tracks, 37 minutes in length, and this is the band's third full-length studio album. They are a German melodic death metal band. As far as the design goes, this album has a ton of potential, but I don't feel like they took full advantage of that said potential. There are two tracks on this album that missed the mark. The opening track and then the interlude. Both of them are instrumental tracks. Both of them have the advantage of bleeding into the songs that come after. So in terms of sequence, they continue the sequence of the record, but they are a little bit overextended. They're too long and they break the fluidity of the album. Now you can make the argument that you need songs like this in order to set up the record as an opening track and also give the listener a sense of a breather, a sense of the break in between the album. It makes the overall record feel a little bit more continuous. It gives a little bit more movement to the album. And normally I would sit here and I would agree with that point of view. Actually, that's normally a point of view that I make, but not on an album that has 10 tracks and is 37 minutes in length. This album is short, and that's not bad. But when you have a short record like this, you need to get to the point. You don't need breaks. You don't need an intro, specifically an intro that goes as long as this one does. And you definitely don't need an interlude. You just need to get to it. You need the aggression, the movement, the fluidity, the momentum that the album carries from song to song to never really stop. So you feel like you're getting the most out of those 37 minutes, and at the end of it the listener can go back again and experience everything all over because it just goes by too quickly. That's kind of the design that this album has, but the execution doesn't really allow it to be that way. So from a structural perspective, I really feel like these two songs hurt the overall fluidity, hurt the overall momentum that this album could have and should have, considering how it's put together and the soundscape that it offers. And as far as soundscape, this is an album that's slightly, perhaps more than slightly, I'm being nice here, it's definitely outside the box as far as Parasite Inc. is concerned. And the main thing that you're going to see on this record that puts it a little bit outside the box is the influence and how much impact the synthesizers and the electronic elements have in the overall sound, in the overall experience, and how this album moves along from song to song and even the movement that it has within the tracks themselves. It's undeniable that the synthesizers and the electronic elements are a huge piece of this puzzle. They drive the songs, they have a direct impact on how you're going to perceive the tracks, but the beauty of it is that the impact that they have is not on a track by track basis, but rather on the overall album. This album really lives off of it. It's undeniable, it's there, it's part of its DNA, and it changes the texture of the sound of the songs and how you're going to perceive them. It takes nothing away from the heaviness of the album. This is perhaps one of their heavier albums if you stripped away the electronic side of the record. But the electronic side of the record blends so well into that heaviness that allows the melody to kind of permeate and create a more softer, easy listening experience, even though the record is still brutally heavy behind it. I like this dynamic, and I like the fact that they didn't use it just on one song here and a song there. They went full boat, and I think that's the only way to do it. If you're going to commit to a soundscape like this, you have to commit to it from beginning to end, and then have the proper mixing together, the proper production behind it, so that you can get the most out of both worlds. You can get the most out of your heavier side with the guitars and drums creating that heaviness, creating that momentum, and then you can get the most out of the electronic side, blending it into that heaviness so that the sound feels more cohesive, the sound feels more like one, and not necessarily allowing the listener to break down all the elements and feel like the keyboards or the synthesizers or the electronic elements are taking something away from the other instruments. So this record really blends it all. It allows you to feel more uniform. The soundscape is more uniform from beginning to end, and all of that uniformity that the soundscape has, it allows the robust nature of the sound and allows the robust nature of the heaviness of the record to really come through. It's just that sometimes comes through more with a melodic push. But I really enjoyed it, and I like the fact, once again, that they went for it from beginning to end, and they didn't just try to, cherry pick a song here and there, because that would really make the album unbalanced. And if there's one thing this album is not, is unbalanced. It's a very cohesive sounding record from beginning to end. Now, some songs have more of that electronic drive, some songs have less, but it's there. And the idea that you get at the end of it is that the album stayed very cohesive, very tight, very uniform throughout. You'll almost forget the songs that were less or more, because overall it's such a unique, distinct element that just permeates and stays with you, and that's what you're going to carry you and is what you're going to take forward from this listening experience. Now, as far as the drums and guitars go, I like the sound that they both have together and how well incorporated they are with those synthesizers. But the drums on this record sound really good. They have texture, they have thickness, they have heaviness, a lot of the power, a lot of the momentum, a lot of the force of the sound really comes from what the drums are doing on a consistent basis from beginning to end. Including some of the electronic sound into the drum sound allows you to better merge these experiences and allows you to better create a soundscape that moves up and down but stays very uniform throughout. Same could be said for the guitars. What I just said for drums, I can just copy and paste and say the same for the guitars. I like the fact that the guitars paired up really well with everything else around them, with the drums, with the synths, with the vocals, everything. The guitars were not the driving force, but they're definitely one of the elements that creates that sense of movement, that sense of heaviness that's definitely present throughout this entire album. I like the nature of their sound. I like the tonality of the guitars. I like how they push. I like the melodic drive, and I also like the fact that the guitars tie in on the heavier side, but they also tie in well with everything around them on the more melodic side. It's a really well put together sounding record. That is undeniable. The sound on this album is really phenomenal. I think it's the most consistently sounding record that they've released. It just feels very thick. It feels still very natural. It still feels very strong. And it has great quality from beginning to end across all the different elements, separate from one another or as you put them together as one. Now, the vocals offer a lot of consistency. There are a few caveats here and there, but nothing major. I also like the fact that as they are adding this electronic side to the soundscape, a few times they added to the vocal performance. It matched well with the songs. It gave them almost more of an industrial vibe, which that experience also adds heaviness to the way the songs come across. So I didn't mind it at all, because once again, the same way you're going to walk away thinking that the sound on this album is really living off of that electronic experience, you're going to walk away from this album feeling like the vocals were very consistent and very grounded in what we've seen from previous records from start to finish, even though there are some changes, there are some ripples here and there throughout the entire record. It just goes to show you how consistent, or at least the experience that you get out of this album is very consistent on both fronts. Now, overall, is this my favorite album from the band? No, and I think the reason why it's not my favorite album is it has nothing to do with the sound, because sound-wise, this is definitely my favorite record from them. I think this is an album that allowed them to be consistent, to be cohesive from start to finish. They had an idea, they went for it, they didn't half-ass it, they just put all the chips in the middle of the table and they just went with the idea that they had, and they executed well sound-wise from beginning to end. A really well put together album, great mixing, great production. But the reason why this is not perhaps my favorite album from Parasite Inc. is the design, is the structure. Put in a shorter intro, take away that interlude, okay, the album maybe it's going to be around 34 minutes in length. I'm okay with that. It doesn't have to be more, because the album is so forceful. It comes at you with such intensity that being short works towards it. It makes the album better. So the structure of this record, in my opinion, really hurts the album. The sound, I'm happy with the design, I'm happy with the approach, and I'm glad that they took this different look as far as their third album is concerned, instead of reinventing the wheel and creating an album that sounded perhaps just like the two previous ones. As far as favorite songs goes, I want to start off with Firstborn. Great melody, great bite. The chorus is outstanding on this song. Vocally is very explosive. Using backing vocals on this track really sets that chorus apart. It allows it to pop a little bit more air. It allows itself to differentiate from everything else that is happening, and that makes it more of an earworm as well. Now, the verses are more direct. You still see the synths there. They create a thicker sound experience. They make the song not just feel melodic, but feel bigger, feel heavier, because the sound feels thicker because of what they're doing and what they're adding. The guitars really break through some of that heaviness towards the end in order to give more a melodic drive, in order to give more of a pause, and in order to allow the listener to then better digest the ending of the track and also better process how you got to that point. Really interesting song, one of my favorites of the album for sure. Next, In False Light. This is my favorite song on the record, and when you talk about earworms, there's no other track on the album that as much as a earworm as this one is. It's a track that's heavy, that's thick, that has a great mix of melody and heaviness. The synths in the verses, they're more underlined. They're there, but they're not necessarily in your face. They're blending better with the drums and guitars, and they're the last piece of the puzzle. They're perhaps the glue that's holding those two together, allowing the sound to stay consistent and move nicely. Then once it gets into the chorus, the song really explodes. The chorus is outstanding. From a musical perspective, the chorus just breathes life. It has great energy, great sound. It feels a lot lighter. It feels a lot easier to digest because of that. And it has this beautiful process to it that the vocals just kind of blend into it, and everything just stays with you. You're always looking forward to the chorus. Not to say that the verses are not good, not to say that any other moments of the song are not good, but it's a song that always takes you to that point, is always building towards that chorus. So when that chorus hits, you're happy that it's finally there. Last but not least, Follow the Blind. This song has a long intro because the interlude bleeds into the intro of this song, and the two kind of become one. So there's a long ways to go until you actually get into the meat and potatoes, if you will, of what the track is all about. The vocals have a little bit of an electronic sound to them, but that matches well with the soundscape and the sound experience of the song, allowing the track to feel almost industrial at times, but it's a very electronic driven track across both parameters, vocally and musically. It matches the experience, so I don't mind them going with this look the same way I didn't mind sometimes for the drums to have more of an electronic sound, because it goes with everything that they've created. And when everything fills in together and all the pieces are in the right place, it doesn't really matter where the starting point is, because everything is pulling you towards the same finish line, and this song is exactly that. I like how it moves. I like the movement. It's a very fluid song, very dynamic track, really interesting. And just because it has that industrial or it has that electronic sound to it, don't think the song is not heavy, because it is a heavy track. It still has a lot of power. It's still very thunderous. This is it. Parasite Inc. Cyan Night Dreams, out August 19th on Reaper Entertainment. Let me know your thoughts on the band, on the singles. Use the comment section below. I'll be reading those and getting back to you. Take care, guys.